Rate limiter. A rate limiter controls how many requests a client can make to a service in a given time window. Common rule will be allow 100 requests per minute per user. Too many requests are blocked early and valid requests are allowed through. Limit request by user ID, IP address, API key. When a client sends a request, it first passes through the rate limiter middleware before reaching any backend service. For example, a request to get API profile is intercepted by the rate limiter before hitting the user service. Rate limiting policies are persisted on disk. Background worker process periodically read these rules and load them into an in-memory cache for fast access. For example, a rule like 100 requests per minute per user is stored on disk and refreshed into cache every 30 seconds. The rate limiter middleware reads the applicable rule from the cache instead of disk to minimize latency. For example, the middleware retrieves the rule for user 123 allowing 10 requests per second. The middleware then fetches request counter and the last request timestamp from Redis, which stores real-time usage data. It retrieves the token count and the timestamp from Redis. The refill token will look like this. Using the rules and Redis data, the rate limiter checks whether the incoming request exceeds the allowed threshold. If the limit is 10 requests per second and this is the 11th request, it is marked as rate limited. If the request is within the allowed limit, it is forwarded to the API server for normal processing. For example, a valid request is routed to the order service to create a new order. If the request exceeds the limit, the rate limiter immediately returns an HTTP 429 too many request response to the client. For example, here the client receives 429 with a retry after 30 header. Blocked requests are either dropped to protect the system or placed into a queue for deferred processing. For example, analytics events may be queued while login attempts are dropped immediately.